Hello, 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 everybody. Oh my goodness. Welcome to a very special episode of Trash Talk. I'm your host, DJ Wooldridge. As always, I'm talking trash with some friends and some people I admire. This week, Mr. Michael Swaim. Oh my goodness.
We must be friends because I know it's not the second subject. Thanks for having me, DJ.
No, pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, you can tell how excited I am by my background.
Exactly. It's a very exciting, lively, exuberant background.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, I'm very excited to have you on because I listen to Small Beans. I listen to your show, and you've been doing the rounds to promote your book, The Climb.
Yes, Small Beans' podcasts for the random listeners.
For the random listeners, if links in the description. But you know what? I'm actually getting ahead of myself. I shouldn't be doing this part. You should be doing this part. Tell the audience at home, if they're not familiar with you, who are you? Where can they find you? What stuff are you working on?
Now, is this a plug spiel, as in very short and focused on what I'm doing now, or do you want the slightly longer, you'll know me from after hours and whatnot?
Plug spiel.
Plug spiel.
Plug spiel.
Maybe we'll do the other stuff.
Well, we'll get to the other stuff. Yeah.
So right now my big things are all housed through patreon.com/smallbeans. Although you can find all our free audio content by pointing your podcast app at just the phrase small beans. But if you join our Patreon for $5 a month, of course, you get, like most outfits like this, twice as much content, a bunch of behind the scenes exclusives and all kinds of stuff. But if you're a fan of me personally, before, during, or after hearing this, I'm in between full-time positions right now. So I'm doing a ton of freelance work. You can find me at Ranker, Games Radar, IGN, How to Beat, the YouTube channel, Some More News, 1-900 Hot Dog, all kinds of places. And those are all like various writing outlets. Impossible Worlds is publishing some of my new sci-fi stories, stuff like that.
So check all that out. Again, there will be.
Oh, and I have a rap album coming out next month.
Oh, man. You've been a busy boy.
I'm always a busy boy because I don't want a real job and I'll work 100-hour weeks for the rest of my life to trade that for I enjoy my work.
Yeah.
So it's like
occasionally.
That's what I would be doing in the backyard with my friends in junior high anyway.
Yeah.
Stop motion bullshit or making up comic book character, you know.
Yeah. Occasionally I'll flirt with going back to getting a real job. And then I spend like about 15 minutes on LinkedIn. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't.
Oh, I'm hardcore on LinkedIn right now because I do want the stability. Well, we were talking before, we're both on the brink of fatherhood.
Yeah.
And so I'd go for the stability. I'm applying. Hey, if you hear this.
Yeah.
I'm like a very skilled veteran heavyweight in specific areas of content creation. And, it's tough out there, man. I'm having trouble finding like a permanent gig.
Yeah.
And if you know me from Cracked, I'll be back on Cracked starting next month.
So if you are watching this live, you're doing that over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. If you want to check out my podcast network, you can do that over at Only Stupid Answers. If you missed the Kickstarter for my comic, Hellbent, you can do that over at hellbentcomicbook.com. Click the pre-order store. That is your opportunity to still get that. And I want to thank everybody that supported that comic. And now that we've done our little plugs, our little reminding the kids at home about the business up top, let's get into it because this has been a fantastic opportunity for me to get to know some of my friends better, know some new people better. And something I stole from my other show, Only Stupid Answers, that we used to open every episode with was asking our guests, what are they into? So is there something you're watching, reading, playing, doing that you'd like to share with the class?
Well, considering it might be some people's first impression, I'm not going to share what I was just playing.
Okay.
But it does lead to a funny, late night style anecdote. I was on Steam downloading so many stepmom porn games, DJ.
Okay. All right.
Then clicked buy, download. Then realized they all pop up on my friends thing.
Great.
Long story short, I'm researching for a comedy piece. I do all kinds of, I absorb all kinds of crazy media. That's, if you know my work, that's like something I might do. And indeed, I'm working on a piece about stupid sex games about not about incest. They're very clear.
It's your stepmom.
These are step moms. Can we be clear about this?
Yeah. The ones that trip me out, occasionally you'll see like, they'll be like, not your stepmom. I'm like, time out. Wait, what does that mean then?
Yeah, but let's see. I'm scrolling through. Oh, I am big into video games.
Yeah.
Big into D&D. Big into serious fiction and poetry and rap. Blah, blah, blah. But to narrow it down to one thing that I think really deserves a shout out, there's an indie game called Arco, A-R-C-O.
Okay.
If you like pixel art. It's a super cool hybrid of top-down strategy, but kind of like a 2D top-down BioWare game. Like time freezes, you tell people what to do. Time unfreezes, they do one thing, And great plot, amazing soundtrack, worth checking out. Getting very underserved. I've seen the devs be like, "We're dying over here, folks. We thought it was really good." And indeed, it is very good.
That sucks. I'm sure we've all been in that position where you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into something. I'm like, this is a winner. This is it. And then you put it out in the world, and you're like,
this is the hit. Yeah.
I was wrong. I guess I was incorrect.
I'll share an exclusive if I'm not making this too structureless. But
go for it.
Abe, my creative partner, doesn't even know this yet because it happened just now. He won't watch this, or I would never say this because he deserves to know first. But you might know, DJ, we're on the long term, we're working on a movie, our own indie movie, and we were hooked up through serendipity. Our movie's about furries.
Yeah.
We were hooked up. We're in talks with a furry billionaire film producer. Like, that's what they do, is they fund any movies. They are a furry themselves, and they have all the money that they could possibly. It would be like nothing to them. Anyway, they called me 10 minutes ago, and they're like, I didn't really like it after reading this.
Oh, no!
Boom! It's crazy in this business how you'll have these, like, glimpses of, like, and if my dreams had come true, that would have been when that would have happened.
Yeah. It's when you talk about, especially doing this show and talking to people more candidly about this stuff, it's, you don't want to get too inside baseball with stuff, but it is, if you're being realistic, it's like, yeah, it's tough, man. It's shit's tough.
I think it's a total crapshoot.
Yeah.
All that you can do, you do have to practice and become good at your craft.
Mm-hmm.
All that does is make it so that you literally exist in the ball tumbler. But you still have, it's still a total crapshoot to get pulled out of the ball tumbler.
Okay, you hit me with a lot of stuff. And so I'm going to, I wanted to follow up on.
Hey, lady, control your kid here.
No. I want to follow up on real quick, not pertinent to anything. So you're telling me on Steam, there are multiple stepmom porn games.
Dude, I mean,
because I'm a console boy, I don't spend a lot of time on Steam.
I get up on transgressing cultural norms and discussing edgelord shit as long as you're not hurting anyone or punching them. So I will talk about simulated incest as deep as you want to go.
Okay.
Because I'm researching, and anything I'm researching, mundane or not, I become encyclopedic about.
Yeah.
There's My Shameless Stepmom. What else was I playing? Motherless, season 1. Let's see, Roundscape Andorevia. That's a fantasy RPG where you earn the right to fuck your whole family one at a time.
Okay.
But you call them by their first names, so they're not your family. The best title though has to be,
please.
Of course, because it's just like directly translated from the Japanese, because it's a hentai game. I'm sure the localization team is not like the best in the biz. So the title they landed on for the English translate is Love X Crotch X Gym.
Yes, that's brilliant.
Also
it's perfect.
Good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So now,
sorry. Just to wrap up, in that one, the gimmick is, all the girls you have sex with are just random girls that you meet, but each of them differently is like, my nickname for you is going to be Little Brother. And it's like, all right, I see you.
All right. Wait, what is the runtime of these games? How long are there? Is there like an average playtime?
That's interesting because I'm not playing them to completion in more ways than one.
Gotcha.
I actually did a version of this. This is going to be an essay video joke. But I actually did a version of this for 1-900 Hot Dog, which is a written comedy site. That was an article where I did this with VR sex games. which are especially crazy to me because you have to use both hands in order to do them. So what are they for? Like, are they not for masturbating?
Okay. So when you say, I thought we were being a little bit euphemistic with saying use.
No,
you're
I'm saying
control,
you need both hands
to control,
navigate the virtual.
What is the point of that?
So these at least are a step down to me in lunacy because you can just click through with one thing, and I'm like, okay, I get the system here. I forgot where I was going.
Yeah, I was asking playtime. Is there like
so I don't know because I haven't completed them, but I will say. Actually, I did complete one because some of them, some of them are too dark for me to. I'm not going to bring them into the article.
Yeah,
because you play them for a bit and you're like, this game was designed by one man who has rape fantasy fixation. Yeah, and that's what the game's about.
Cool.
That's not that funny.
Yeah. It's hard to make jokes about that one.
Yeah, exactly. So, although for some more news, the topical show, I am writing abortion jokes right now.
Great.
Always a delight.
Yeah.
But that one ended because, and this is I was like, I zoomed out and was like, I can't believe I'm in this situation.
Yeah.
This is going to be like half real. Can I get real for a second?
Yeah, please.
I'm the child of a rape survivor. Okay. Grew up with a lot of awareness around it. Different things offend different people. I know we all despise rape, but I really do have like an important fixation of like, it's the worst possible thing that I know a lot of people feel that way about it. So it was really true discomfort and disgust when through no fault of my character's own, I got gang raped as like the first encounter in this game.
Whoa.
And then he goes, you're pregnant and it's with a dragon baby too. And they come so fast. You have to go get an abortion in 60 seconds or it's too late and you can't get an abortion. I'm like, oh God. And I went to the settings and I'm like, please don't make me have my rapist baby, even in an imaginary.
Yeah.
Can I turn this off? And it goes, you can turn pregnancy off, but not only if you do it right at the beginning. It's too late now. You're already pregnant. So I'm running around the world map, desperately trying to abort my rapist baby in time. And, I didn't, and I got too mouthy with the doctor, and he killed me, and that was the end of that game. So that game was like 40 minutes long. I didn't try all the mirrors.
Yeah, you didn't play all the branching. Got it. Yeah, no, I get you. All right.
None of the other ones I've gotten to the end, but cool. I do read reviews, and some people are like, "This took me 12 hours."
That's a lot.
That's meaty for a game like that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's an.
What's the show about?
The show about you. Today's
no,
about
I
you.
Watched episodes.
Yeah. So now you touched a little bit on your time with IGN and Cracked. As we wind our way to your book, I'd love to know a little bit about to get to the point where you're at now, a little bit about your career journey, how you got here, what motivated you to pursue all these creative endeavors that you're doing.
Yeah, well, I turned to film from my first love was writing trippy science fiction short stories like you might find published in a magazine of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And then I realized that that's not a job anymore because that's what TV was. But now we have TV and that's easier. And more people would rather watch an episode of Black Mirror than spend the same equivalent of time reading the same information. I like both. And I think people who still read fiction, have the same argument, which is it does take less effort. And I do love TV, but also meeting it halfway with the effort of your imagination can create some moments in your mind that can't exist, if they're made literal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blah, blah, blah. Every artistic medium has a thing that's unique to it and that makes it so cool. So, I originally wanted to do that. Yeah. So I realized I was at the wrong time, sometime in college, probably when, and this is dramatized in the book, I went to my writing professor and was like, we've spent 4 years learning to write. What is the I'm about to graduate. I have this big sheaf of things I wrote. Where do I send it? And he said, if I knew that, I wouldn't be a professor. This is a job. You wasted 4 years learning a skill, not a job.
Yeah.
And I was like, and they don't tell you that? When you're a freshman? That's stupid, dude. You just gave up the game. College is a scam. Got it. Thanks. I could have learned this by watching YouTube and being very invested and joined writing groups and shit. Yep. I didn't need to come here. Anyway, I randomly hooked up with a bunch of different people and like sorted my mental stuff out. So I guess that's what college is for. But
similar. I got a creative writing degree for whatever that is worth. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, over that time, I met my main creative partner and best friend, Abe Epperson, who was always only interested in filmmaking.
Yeah.
I just wanted to write. I had written and directed. Actually, I always wanted to do it all. I said I wanted to be a Renaissance man. So I wrote, direct, produced, and performed in some one-man shows, stand-up, plays, sketch reviews around campus. They went really, really well. In what turned out, I think, to be an amazing foreshadowing and template for how my career basically seems destined to go and my place in history. I got tons of buzz and my shows were packed and I had this huge, I was like, with the theater kids, like a big man on campus in terms of people being like, man, we love your stuff, dude. Teachers would pull me aside and go, you're the real deal. And we're so excited to see what you do. Then simultaneously, I never got cast. I was a theater major ever in a single department show ever. The one time I did it was like a guy who's dying of syphilis who has no lines, but has to get makeup on 4 hours a day and 4 hours to take off.
Yeah.
And again, I was just like, fuck this. And then when I graduated, they gave me the Arthur Wagner Award, which is like the departmental award for the best actor in the class. And again, I went behind the scenes to the teachers that I was close with, and I was like, I truly don't understand, because I thought the teachers weren't aware of me by whatever vagary of, life is busy, there's a lot of mouths to feed. But you gave me the best actor award. So the teachers vote on that. So you guys do know that I'm very talented. I never got cast once. There were 12 plays over the course of my, time here, and I paid thousands of dollars. I thought I'd get to be in a play. And they were literally like, you're way too tall. And the other one was like, yeah, I wanted to put you in blah, 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 but I put you next to the other people and you're too tall. It looked weird. Yeah, the height was a really unfortunate thing.
Wow.
And one of them did say, if you can't handle that this is the reality, be aware. And they're so right. Mm-hmm. As soon as I was a director at Cracked casting stuff, I was like, that guy doesn't look right. Get him out of here. He's too tall.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
How tall are you?
Which is also why I pivoted to 6'4".
Okay, I'm 6'6", so
crazy tall. But yeah. Also theater, I don't know why, but theater actors tend to be not that tall, I noticed.
Yeah.
I was the tallest guy in the land. Which in life can be a status thing, but it fucked me in theater. You want to be a good Tom Cruise height, but still well proportioned.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why I pivoted from acting to mainly focusing on writing. And then basically Abe and I founded our sketch troupe, Those Aren't Muskets, because it was just a fun thing to do at the time. We were serious about wanting it to lead to future career steps, but what I mean is, and you were alive for it, so but I think if you're even a little younger than us, you might not know. Yeah. Internet sketch troupe was a cool thing that everyone was doing. Yep. There were 1,000 of them.
Yep.
It was trendy to be an internet sketch troupe, and it's now morphed into influencer, talking head, all the kinds of stuff I still do because I adapt to the marketplace and I want to use my skills, and I have nothing against blah, 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 blah. But when I was coming up, it was making sketches. That's what most of the high school, college smartasses who wanted to fuck around with their film camera and the internet were making sketches and uploading. So we did that with all our pals. I was already doing sketch reviews, so I was already kind of comedy-minded. Abe was the editor-in-chief of the MQ, which was our college's satire paper, which, unlike a lot of colleges, was not phoned in. It was competitive with The Onion, or trying to be. It was very, good.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal. So he was editor-in-chief one year. I was the editor-in-chief the year after that. We slowly just became enmeshed and started working on everything together. We turned all the sketches I had written for stage into things we could film. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. That becomes the Those Aren't Muskets backlog. That attention, plus some choice articles from the paper, got us the attention of Jack O'Brien, who is the head of Crack.com. So if you know me primarily, it's probably from my 13 years at Crack, the bulk of my comedy career.
Yeah.
Because I am always doing stuff outside comedy, which we'll probably get to. But And some of it pays. But I mean, my stable mainline job that most people know me from, if you Google my name, it's for Cracked, because I was there 13 years. I was the head of the video department specifically. I will say the non-video department, meaning the articles, are even bigger deal than I'll ever be in terms of metrics. Like Cracked's big claim to fame was inventing the listicle.
Yeah.
You can look into the history. They straight up did. And my pals invented the listicle, which is a bad thing, in my opinion. You'll never believe how your mind will change by the end of these 12 wild things. You've never, like the finely tuned headline that an algorithm chose for you that's broken into 10 segments because we've had a panel of psychologists figure out exactly the human attention span. Each thing is an embedded link that goes to an ad. The point is, it was very funny, good, well-written content. The secret sauce of Cracked is they still also hybridize that with the old model of hiring writers you think are really good and paying them a lot and demanding a lot from them.
Yeah.
So like Jack genuinely wanted the stuff to be good, so it was. But most outfits do not care about that.
Nope.
So now that listicle format has spread to places like BuzzFeed where they're like, it doesn't have to be good. So now you just have a glut of generic bullshit. But I will go to bat for Crack's articles, but not the headline. The headline for computer-generated bullshit.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the same time, I and Abe and Danielle O'Brien, Katie Willer, Katie Stoll, Cody Johnston were all sort of building the Cracked video department, which did end up having about a decade of its time in the sun and having pumping out a lot of hits. Our biggest show was called After Hours. I can get into as much or as little detail you want about anything that happened at Cracked because it's literally a decade of anecdotes. I met a bunch of famous people, a bunch of funny but also horrible shit happened. Like, we can go anywhere you want.
Yeah.
But in that capacity, like wrote, produced, directed, conceived of, we figured out over 1,000 sketches.
That's insane. That's wild.
Yeah.
And
so, they range everywhere from like zero budget YouTube shit to, I would say, stuff you see and you're like, oh, that seems like it could be on Netflix or whatever. When they gave us a good budget.
And so I found your guys' stuff. I didn't follow Cracked. I didn't know that stuff, but I think it was like Behind the Bastards, and then, Dave Bell's on Behind the Bastards. So I started checking out Gamefully, and then I found you guys, you know what I mean? And so I'm finding out about the Cracked diaspora post-diaspora.
Do you know Cracked After Hours, though? Had that crossed your desk? Okay.
No.
I mean, refreshing to me,
Yeah. So when that happened, when the Cracked, you're going back, but the Cracked as it was went away.
Well, I'm freelancing for them in a robust way, but it will never be
what it was.
They can't afford it. Or in a nutshell, for people who don't know, Cracked famously, along with all of its peers, financially collapsed because of a bunch of internet chicanery and sort of consolidation of Web 2.0 and business models. College Humor and Funny or Die were also gutted around the same time for the same reasons. Whatever. We don't have to unpack it in detail.
I was with an outfit.
The end of that was like, and now we don't make sketches online that much anymore.
Yeah. I was with an outfit, SourceFed. Not 10 years though. Whenever you guys talk about Cracked, I was like, oh, that reminds me of what happened at SourceFed. It wasn't 10 years. We weren't there 10 years, so it's not the same.
I remember when SourceFed happened, though. It was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
There was a 4-year period where every internet media outlet that paid people real career wages where they could live there and raise a family started being like, we can't do this anymore. We have to collapse down to just paying people minimum wage on the internet.
Yeah.
That same cycle was recurring at every shop.
Well, and I'm sure it wasn't too dissimilar where it was like, I was at SourceFed, that shut down. Then I went to Defy for a minute, and then that all went, you know what I mean? It was like, I guess this isn't my thing anymore.
I worked at several other places I didn't even mention because then they were gone within I just wrote a few articles and then they were gone. Do you know Star Hodge?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We've been,
we're launching a surprise project in October, which is a D&D campaign, spooky Halloween D&D campaign. I'll be running that Star is the Star.
Amazing. Amazing. No, Star's fantastic. She's worked with me on a few projects post SourceFed, and not to get too into the weeds, but there was a little bit of overlap between our pregnancy journeys. So I was commiserating with her about certain stuff. Go support. She's raising money right now. So if you guys are familiar with Star, go support
Indeed.
her. But so since you've been working with Abe since pre-Crack days, was that a pretty easy transition? You know what I mean? Like going from Crack to like Small Beans was a natural progression of like, yeah, let's do that. Let's just do this now.
Oh, from Crack to Small Beans?
Yeah.
Man, no, it was both. It's interesting. I'm much more filled with fear now because of how lucky I've been. Mm-hmm. I've never, ever had to look for or have a real job by what most people would consider real job. Like, I mean, I was making 6 figures thinking of, like, wouldn't it be funny if I ate a raw crab with the shell on and then filming me doing that and then posting it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole story built around it because, again, we weren't influencers, so we weren't just doing guy eats raw crab.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of a long-running series. But that's a crazy privilege, right? And even on the serious side, like, I've been privileged to just say, I'm interested in working on this artistic project and then do that, and I make enough money to live. But the only trade-off is I have to work all the time as hard as I can.
Yeah.
To make ends meet. So when Cracked ended, because I was, however, 30, I thought that I would just immediately get another job at some other very big, powerful shop. And now I have a much humbler attitude towards life and understand that the entire industry is like tiny puddles now.
Yep.
And am such a veteran in the ins and outs of not just writing and performing and like putting on a show, but I've also been the SEO guy and the marketing department guy and the blah, blah, blah. So I do have a deep understanding of internet markets and monetization and the way late stage capitalism is currently bucking all the money into the hands of tiny venture capitalists, which is totally unsustainable, but they don't care because they'll be dead before it completely falls apart. And then we will come together and figure out some other neat thing to do.
Yeah.
Just like, Netflix
super
kills
neat.
Blockbuster and blah, blah kills blah, blah, and blah, blah kills blah, blah. But in the middle, it's really hard to get a job doing what you used to be able to do, get a job to do. So, I'm definitely more scared now.
Yeah.
After Crack broke, the big problem was I immediately, with Abe, was like, let's launch Small Beans the day. Oh, also, one of the worst decisions I made in my life. I quit Cracked 2 weeks before they laid everyone off.
Ooh.
I didn't know they were going to lay everyone off, obviously.
Yeah.
So I sacrificed, because 13 years, like a $60,000 pension, which is more money than I've ever had in my bank account at one time.
Yeah.
So I quit. 2 weeks later, everyone was laid off. I was like so panicky about, I can't believe my wife had just left me and took half the money after cheating on me, unbeknownst to me, taking the house and the divorce. So I was like, broke, divorce, not knowing what. And yet I had the total stupid confidence of a 30-year-old. I was like, let's just start this Patreon. I'm sure that'll be huge.
Yeah.
There's these Cumtown guys, and they're monsters, and they make $1 million a month. You heard of them?
Yeah.
Anyway, the big problem was, and if you're interested in the lore, listener, you can go find an episode. I'm sorry if you're picking up Gardner.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
It's called Dan and Mike Are Fighting. So, a Cracked guy who blew up, much to our delight, Daniel O'Brien, was there the whole, he was a big face of the site the same time I was in the video and on the written side. He has since become a 5-time Emmy-winning writer for Last Week Tonight. One of my dear, dear friends. And, Jesus Christ. There's like a lawn or like a leaf blower right here driving thoughts through my head like a spike. But anyway, my point was I was super confident, posted it. Dan immediately reached out, was like, what the fuck? And was deeply offended. I think because he thought like the body was still warm or there was some way we could maybe go back or I was undermining what could happen. But anyway, we were like estranged about it and fighting really. That was the main thing about that time that I remember is that Daniel and I were fighting. And then we decided to do something boldly vulnerable, which is on brand for us, which was we made up on stream. And you can find that episode called Dan and Mike Are Fighting where we didn't know if we were going to make up. Like
Yeah.
we were really, really pissed at each other. But by the end, we do make up. So that went well.
Spoilers. They made up.
Yeah.
So now that you've, in some ways, spoiled your memoir that you've written, your sci-fi fantasy semi-memoir, let's talk about it. Let's get into it, because one of the things that started this conversation is you wanted to go on different shows to talk about The Climb. You have it listed as a sci-fi fantasy semi-autobiographical book. I wanted to ask you, as we dive into The Climb, what prompted you mentioned that originally this was kind of your goal, was to write these kind of stories, but what was the process? What prompted you to really focus on The Climb? How long have you been working on it?
25 years.
Nice.
So, and I can say that earnestly, that I've been working on it on and off, but mostly on for 25 years. So I write a lot, and there's a difference, in scope and goal between that time that you sit down to write a cool story or a piece with specific goal or guidelines, and then the time you sit down thinking, if I were in a vacuum, and what is my contribution to this world as an artist? So this is my important novel that really says everything about life that I think I've observed, that I think is true. Like if I think it's vital and important and it would help another human being live a better life, it's woven into the story.
Yeah.
It's also my ultimate artistic statement, in the sense that it's written, it's fully self-indulgent. It is writing the kind of book I would want to read, which I'll mention influences like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Charlie Kaufman, like Adaptation, I think, is called out in the book and is a legitimate influence. So, it's really hard to reduce, because truly, when I was 14, I got the initial concept for the underlying magic system, as well as the idea of the structure of a character climbing. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but the nature of the journey, which I don't think, DJ, you know the full scope of yet, is like the bones I came up with when I was 14. But I didn't have anything good to say when I was 14, and I knew that. So I literally waited and gestated, and now I've lived a lot and had many, many events, and I'm on the brink of fatherhood. And as I say in the intro, which I don't think is in the samples, you probably haven't heard this either, it feels like it will take another 25 years to have gathered enough important information that's worth sharing with this kind of gravitas for me to write another book like this.
Okay.
I bet parenthood does yield that much wisdom. But this basically covers everything that I think is true and vital about life and the universe and the meaning of life and love and suffering, that I think I can stand behind, and I really believe, from birth till everything except child rearing, right? That'll be the next book. So, then on its surface, in case that sounds boring to people, because it's super reference driven, it's super experimental, it's trippy as fuck, it's very meta and postmodern. But at its core, it's a sci-fi fantasy epic adventure. That is about a guy who has severe addiction and mental health challenges, but is also on a traditional hero's journey where he's going to save the universe by getting to the end of the quest. I call it magical realism because it's both sci-fi and fantasy. I didn't constrain myself to. He lives in sort of a Mesoamerican level society in terms of technology, culture, folklore. But there's also sentient machine intelligence in the book, and there's spaceships, but there's also, I don't want to say too much.
I was going to say, well, what's interesting is the sense I get from
I do whatever the hell I want. That's
I love it.
What I think of as magical realism and postmodernism is basically the offer is, I'm assuming you're fully aware of sci-fi and fantasy tropes So you're not going to get confused no matter how crazy I make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's pretty crazy.
And what I find compelling about that, because at the point where I am at, we're not quite getting to the spaceship stuff yet. And so I find it interesting, based on what I've read so far. It seems like as he ascends the tree, technological levels expand.
So far, you're the first person to pick up on that organically.
Okay.
I thought that was one of the easier. So that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is I've been told that I'm too clever, or to not to my own horn, let's say complex for my own good, which means I can write really simply. I can write a lot of different ways because I learned to write and that's my job.
Yeah.
But when I write what I want, the reason I mentioned the Coen brothers is they do this too, and it's my favorite. Like a movie like Serious Man, you can analyze the frame down to the nth degree, and like everything means something very striking and poetic.
Yeah.
Like the fame, you know, the cover image, if people are unaware of Serious Man, is a guy on the roof in the 60s trying to shake the antenna so he can get a clear signal for his kids to watch TV. Well, the movie is about him trying to understand the will of God so he can leave a better world for his children. So that's a perfect image. He's trying to understand, right? So it's like that, by which I mean everything means something. It's deeply, deeply layered. Most of the layers mean multiple things. Like I compare it to Arrested Development in my head. So like, yes, as he advances up the tree, it is a metaphor for the entire timeline of human history.
Yeah.
It's also a metaphor for the process of going through childhood and leaving it behind. It's also a metaphor for how we process food from the time of the Industrial Revolution up to modern day. They're like, you'll see that start to come in. And then along the same timeline, there's the idea of like heading towards the singularity and consciousness one day, you know, becoming something more than we currently perceive it to be. Well, it gets really weird.
I'm big into all that. I'm big into all that. Yeah. Cause at the point I'm at, and I feel comfortable talking about it because it is the part that you released. And it's also like, I literally can't spoil it because I haven't finished it yet. But, I liked the, you know, starting from, Sino's family structure. And I would use the term things are more nurturing, as opposed to once I'm going to call them the grasshopper people. Once he gets to the grasshopper people and the limb folk, and you get to a sense of school structure, work structure, those ecosystems that we get caught up in. The other, you know, you talked about kind of the broader themes of family and the evolution and everything, but you've also been upfront that this is semi-autobiographical. Is there anything was there anything you're like, no, this is too personal, or oh no, this is too inside baseball, people won't understand what I'm referencing here? Was there any of that, or was it literally just like, no, this is what's going in, I don't care what other people say?
So this is a shitty answer, but it's really just a choose your own adventure, because one of the things I'm proud of is you can't really predict what's going to happen all the way through to the last page in a very real way.
Yeah.
There are fundamental twists that you haven't reached yet that are so expansive that I can't, that I'm like, I mean, I would say, I guess if you want me to spoil it, but I mean, like really spoil it. Like this is something you will not see coming. A lot of people who have experienced it have been like, wow, that was so delightful.
I'm going to say no, because I don't want to
spoil. I can't answer that question without spoiling.
Okay. Because I don't want to spoil it, because obviously I want the audience to go. There'll be links in the description. I think you should go pick this book up. You should go check it out. At very least, you should go listen to the first 3 hours that he dropped. You can get both, right? You can get the book and the audiobook.
Because here's my other thing about art.
Yeah.
One thing I realized by writing this book is, so for example, on my website, very cheaply, you can also get a strategy guide or like a walkthrough for the book if you want. Because just because I like to think very complexly does not mean I don't want to be understood, or that I want to use it to make myself seem so smart that I'm distanced from you. Mm-hmm. Just the opposite. Yeah. I crave connecting with other human beings, yet my brain works very quickly and likes really complex systems. So I am the opposite of the artist who's like, look at this crazy abstract complexity I made. you take from it whatever you want. I'm like, no, I'll explain it to you.
Yeah.
The cowboy hat represented when my mom hit me when I was 7, you know. My mom never hit me.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I'm happy to do that. Do you want me to spoil it?
But it sounds like you want. It sounds like you're itching to.
All right. So if people don't want to know the big offer that this book had. So I'll say this. It's hard because basically the book becomes recursive. So the scene that I'm about to describe also is in the book.
Yeah.
But one day I was thinking about the book while on a lot of acid.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, basically the whole back third of the book came to me.
Yeah.
And I realized what I needed to do, which was really, I think, the key to it being a very special book. And the thing that I never could have thought of till now. Like the most postmodern, like I had to be this years old to realize that what I wanted to do was also advance the medium of writing itself through time as he climbs up the tree.
Love it.
As you'll see,
Yeah.
as he climbs past the medieval level, he eventually reaches a point where instead of prose, he exists in a liminal drug-induced space that is in the form of like an epic Greek poem like the Iliad.
Very cool.
And that transforms into a modern day era that's in the screenplay format where his name's literally Michael. So no, I can't get too personal.
Yeah, gotcha.
You find out everything about my deepest fears and like it becomes literally an autobiographical screenplay.
Yeah.
And then beyond the section beyond that, I wrote in tandem with AI. And then it evolves beyond that and beyond that, and beyond that. And sort of, it also becomes a treatise on what I think the future of writing is.
So something I didn't have it.
It's a really good book. I'm very smart.
Go check it out. Well,
also the other thing I think so, because I trained so hard to write the right way.
Yeah.
And that's another big piece of advice is you do get special work out of yourself when you turn 40 and go, I think I'm good enough to not care about the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in this book, in the beginning, as I think you alluded to, for a long, long time, I don't describe anything.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's fantasy or sci-fi. I literally only describe what my mental health problems are.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the section, I go like, that's considered a really bad way to start a book. I don't care, and that's part of it.
Well, that was something interesting because you know you've mentioned before in a lot of your work your love of structure and everything. And so when I was listening to it, I was like, we have spent a lot of time just in his headspace, and I was like, that doesn't seem, for somebody that loves structure, that feels a little daring. That's structurally, that feels like a little coloring outside the lines.
And yet it is deeply structured in terms of the structural games I'm interested in playing. So I will say, I think it's the first example of a piece of art I've made where I granted myself the grace. You've been doing this and nothing else for 15 years.
Yeah.
You're probably finally one of those people where they say, well, when you're good enough, you actually can unshackle the rules and guide by instinct somewhat with an understanding of the rules so deeply that you're not really going to fuck up.
Yeah.
And I found that to be true, and it makes you feel godlike because I will say, writing sci-fi is the only realm in which I feel that degree of confidence. I truly feel like I can say without bragging, I've mastered the skill, like someone who can play 8 instruments because they play so many instruments. And it's not bragging. It's just like you would too if you did it this long.
Yeah.
I've just finally done it that long.
So speaking of the meta aspect of it, the metafictional aspect of it, I've been thinking a lot lately about the nature of where, I don't know how any other way to say it, of like where art goes as we deconstruct, like when you talk about how you deconstruct the form later in the book.
It all leads towards stepmom porn games.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, that's where we're going. But I think, and there's a couple different ways to look at it in that, look at something like Deadpool and Wolverine, where it's meta into the degree that it's not, if you take away the references to things, it's just references all the way down. Like it's not.
It's actually a sequence of live action, like good comic strip ideas involving Marvel, or it's like an expansive stand-up set.
Yeah, I compared it when I was talking about,
and they confidently were like, "No, yeah, it's that. It's just jokes and stuff."
Yeah, to me, it reminded me. It was the first time it's like the only example in the MCU of like a clip show. Like, hey, you remember Blade? You remember,
and
like,
some
you know what I mean?
People can roll with that.
Yeah,
and some people are like, "What happened to them getting an important artifact that saves the world? Why didn't that happen?"
But the other thing is kind of like what you're talking about, where you're kind of deconstructing format and obviously utilizing that in a way to expand the medium you're working in. Like, you're talking about screenplay format and stuff like that, and you're talking about the nature of writing.
Well, I always want to take a medium toward a direction that exemplifies something only that medium can do, because I just feel like that's when something is like hitting its purest, like ultimate Vegeta form or whatever. So if I'm writing a book, I want to have sections in it that could not be filmed or made into a comic.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
If I'm doing a comic book, I want at least one panel that could not be replicated in film. I always try to do that.
Yeah, for a lot of the comics I've worked on, even though, like, I came out here to work on movies, I've written a bunch of stuff, but when I was working on comics, like, because I love that medium so much, it's like I want to make stuff that you couldn't make into a movie, and having done,
or at least that it has those moments.
Yeah, and it was one of those, like, that was probably a mistake. Professionally, that was probably a mistake, because people make comics so that they can make them in the movies. But
I mean, my whole life is a debate between, is it a mistake? What's a mistake?
Yeah.
Making the best, most fulfilling art you can, but your career does not go as far as you hoped it would.
Yeah.
Or the opposite, like,
I think you could take that and sum that up as to.
I have friends who are working on Marvel movies now who we talk very frankly at dinner, and they're like, money is important, but if you took it out of the equation, I perceive you to be actually having I wish I had more time to write whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. And find that incredibly meaningful. And I also think that you could take that as the tagline of life. What is a mistake? We're all just trying, what is a mistake?
Oh. Well, there's also another thing about the book is every single chapter has like a moral at the end, like Aesop's Fables. One of the very first ones is a ripoff of Vonnegut, which the first few chapters also intentionally are. I like to intentionally chameleon other writers' styles, and that's on display here. We don't even know enough to know what's good news and what's bad news. Mm-hmm. Like, it's only 5-10 years later that you're like, my life really went to shit that day that I tripped on that stick.
Yeah.
Or, man, if I never had that horrible car accident, then this and this and this, and ultimately you look back and, wow, Ico, which is a difficult space to inhabit. I guess it's all just random.
Yeah. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. But what do you think from going from postmodernism to metamodernism, what do you think, is there a bottom to deconstruction? Do we start I guess what I'm asking is, do you have because you guys talk about this a lot on your various shows, is there a point where we're like, well, we've just deconstructed this medium enough, time to start going back the other way? So
the book covers this too.
Yeah.
And it is a treatise on that as well.
Yeah.
In fact, so this is what I've been craving to do, by the way. This has now become a podcast, a spoiler cast. Like, I'm speaking as if the people have read it already.
Yes.
Which is so much more fun for me, but I probably ruined the book for some people who might have listened to it. But, because it's an audiobook as well.
Anyway, in your defense, I for stuff that's really good. Like, I knew the spoiler of Sixth Sense before Sixth Sense or Fight Club. Two big examples.
I think it will still hit.
When it comes to that stuff, it still works. You know what I mean? It still works even. And the joke,
I like to think the jokes will remain funny because I'm not spoiling. Yeah, it's also a comedy. If that wasn't clear, there's funny moments all throughout. And wry little observations, like I like to make. But no, in the screenplay portion, Abe and I discussed that explicitly at length, what comes after postmodernism, including a transcripted excerpt from a podcast episode that you probably have in mind as you ask this question. There's also a moment in the book where I reflect back on how one day I'll probably be on a podcast talking about this, writing this scene. And so now that loop is closed.
There you go.
Basically, where I land, I answer that question with the entire underlying cosmological system. So that I'm not going to go into because I did come up with it when I was 14, and it takes the entire length of the book to explain it.
Gotcha.
But basically, you know how in any fantasy cosmology where the author chooses to nail down rules, obviously you don't have to. But I'm really like hard sci-fi plus trippiness.
Yeah.
Both. Anything could happen, but there's rules.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I think the rules are rewarding. So, there, you will, in a way that I couldn't possibly explain in a nutshell.
Yeah.
The universe works in a certain clockwork way.
Yeah.
And Sinnoh will discover the secret way that the universe works. So just keep in mind that, for what it's worth, if you're interested, that is my answer to what comes after postmodernism.
Gotcha.
Is basically what happens to God at the end of this.
I haven't even gotten to God. You know, what happens to God, what I do to God in this book.
Well,
that's your answer.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
He does meet God,
Yeah.
who is a dinosaur played by David Attenborough.
Love it. Perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So you touched on it a little bit, but I did want to dive more into it on your thoughts on, so you've written this book. Was there thought put into, you know, how do I get this on the bookshelves? How do I get a movie deal off this book? Or was it like, no, this is a personal work. I kind of don't care whether it becomes a New York Times bestseller or anything like that. How do you navigate those, I would think, dueling impulses?
Yeah. No, I make no bones about, I crave validation and love and connection with other humans and want to be understood.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm obsessed with making art. So I can truly say, I don't really have the fame chaser thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't daydream like, if everyone knew my art, I'd be so famous. Like, I don't even judge people. Everyone feels however they feel.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the like fame hook never got in me. But the hook of the more people that read this, the more connected I'd be to the great human experiment and the more impact my art made, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I share that ambition. And then also, I share the opposite, which is, I think, common to artists and is brought up in the book, which is the self-loathing of like, I've been lucky enough to work with many talented people, and so-and-so's 40, and they, or, you know, like Daniel has 5 Emmys. Does that mean my art is not as good?
Yeah.
So-and-so sold a book, or like Jason Pargin, cohort friend for a long time, best-selling author. He makes his living just releasing novels. And to answer your question, DJ, I tried by hook or by crook everything I could possibly do to get this book repped or published in a real way. And no, it's just published through my imprint. Like I said, I feel tremendously lucky. This is why I said my college experience foreshadowed this.
Yeah.
I can rightly say that I have tens of thousands of fans, and some of them have been with me for decades, and many of them truly, deeply appreciate what's special about my work and are ride or die for me enough that I can make my living doing this.
Yeah.
However, I've never been repped. I've never had a screenplay option. I've never and all my crack friends have accomplished all these things.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I can't afford, for ego reasons, to think I guess it's because I'm bad at what I do and everything I try I'm just not good at. I have to believe all kinds of various things, like maybe my style is too complex and cerebral to easily maybe it's just a random crapshoot with the balls tumbling and all you can do is get in the game and that's all you can do, blah, blah, blah. So as I go through life, I just get better and better at accepting reality and adapting to it and so I would say it is like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. So most of the time, because I practice gratitude, which is a theme of the book, anything you practice, you get better at.
Yeah.
So I practice gratitude. So most of the time, I'm able to inhabit a mental space of being grateful that I have fans. Because that's why I did it, is to have individuals. So I've sold 300 copies of the book. I can sit here and think, what's wrong with my writing that Jason can sell tens of thousands of copies of his book, and that I can walk into a bookstore and go, that book sucks, that person is like a transphobic monster, and I don't think that book's even particularly good.
Yeah.
They got published. There's a fucking million books here. I'm smart and hardworking and nice, and I'm 40, or like I've had just as much opportunity as Jason, for example, to like figure out the system, and people get published every day. But no, I don't know. Yeah. I've never gotten an acting agent. I've never gotten a writing representative. I've never gotten a screenplay option. I've never gotten a book really published. All I've gotten is a steady stream of human beings who reach out to me and tell me your work deeply has enriched my life. And I'm like, well, what do you need more than that?
True. Yeah, I think that's
you eventually can settle for that. But totally, I would be lying if I'm not like, yeah, there's moments where I'm like, I went in a real bookstore.
Yeah, what's funny too, because
I think it's good enough. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I'm sure you've been in a position too where like where people will be like, well, it's not a competition, and it's like, I appreciate that, but also we live in capitalism, so you're wrong. It is a competition, whether we like it or not. It is,
especially now that it's like the more art I sell, the more, just like a carpenter selling boxes, or the more art I sell, the more money I'll have to make my son's life better now. So it seems even bigger and more important.
Yeah, but I think I do agree with your perspective on it. And I do think that is because at the end of the day, you're making art, and art is designed to impact people, which is not to devalue the value in getting a paycheck, but you know what I mean, like that the fact that your work is impacting people, and
it's the range. I think most people figure this out by now. Money can't buy happiness above a certain point.
Yep.
And in fact, it can make you more and more and more miserable, and just a hollow piece of shit.
Yeah.
In most cases, it's hard for the human soul to withstand being rich.
Yeah.
In my opinion, but people who are like, therefore money is nothing. No. There's a baseline of the bottom, though, where it super matters and directly impacts your happiness.
And what's fucked up is we could all be there, but for some reason we've decided to give like 5 people all the money.
Yeah. No, totally. If you divided, even if you let all those people, let's be honest, guys, each keep $1 billion, you could still give everyone.
It's still everybody. It makes me
But I agree with Warren Buffett, who said, it is just that I'm addicted to the game or whatever.
Yeah.
Functionally, someone who makes $750,000 a year's life is exactly the same as mine. They get access to all the top tier rich guy shit. Yeah. So do I.
Yeah. I did want to touch on, you mentioned it earlier. What's the deal with Papa Bear? What is Papa Bear for the kids that might not know?
Yeah, so at any given time, I'm doing a billion things.
Yeah.
Personally in life, I am really refocusing, or, people who end up not making it in Hollywood have to go through a phase where they decide, I give up. And I'm doing that after Papa Bear, one way or the other, unless it completely changes my life.
Yeah.
So then I'm looking for something more stable, ideally in comics or gaming, but if I'm being ultra realistic, probably social media marketing. Because I really, really, really am excited to be a dad, and I think it'll be super fun.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited I can just focus on that. That'll be fun. And, but our last big hurrah, basically Abe and I, we've always been we want to be the Coen brothers. That was our shared dream.
Yeah.
Meaning, not literally, except in the sense of two guys who think uncannily alike. We have been told on sets that it's like working with brothers or something. Be powerful enough that you get to make a movie that you wrote, make every decision, and then release the movie. That would be the dream. A career in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Of any size. Sustainably.
Yeah.
But man, that's asking a lot. When you actually crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
Very few people get that these days. Like Wes Anderson and P.T. Anderson and a couple other guys.
The two Andersons, yeah. Paul W.S. Anderson,
even huge successes are like John Watts, who we came up with and is an amazing director and did Spider-Man No Way Home and blah, blah, blah. He still mostly has to do what a large studio system tells him to do.
Yep.
Like, we wanted to be, a person who gets to write what they want, make what they want, blah, blah, blah. So to that end, let's see how we did. We wrote a screenplay that someone bought and gave us a budget for, and we shot it, and we released it, and that's called Kill Me Now.
Yeah.
And it's a horror comedy. I wrote and produced, and I'm in it. It also has Beck Bennett and Kyle Mooney from before they were picked up by SNL, because we were buds, and like I said, everyone's in a sketch troupe. We knew them through that. They had a sketch troupe called Good Neighbor. And of course, that was another route that I daydreamed about, is maybe I'll go to SNL, but didn't. And I've had many friends who have. I gotta say, most of them were like, it fucking sucks. It's such like an evil, abusive workplace.
Yeah,
but,
I've been talking with some friends that, like, in my mind, like, this person's made it, and they're like, yeah, man, it fucking
and they're like,
sucks.
everyone has ulcers and shit.
Yeah.
It's just like, don't disgrace this legendary. It's like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
I'm so stressed out. But anyway, Beck and Kyle, both tremendously talented, funny people. So we made that movie. At the last minute, our entire distribution budget, which if you don't know, or to the layman out there, you need extra money just to make the deals required to make the movie go places and be seen by people.
Yeah.
So our movie was produced but failed to find distribution, which means literally no one's ever seen it, except, like, it was not, it was canned. It was buried. People have seen it because we made it come out on, like, YouTube and shit. So, like, you can find it, and in fact, and I get no money for this, and I don't know who does or how it got there, you can rent it for $2.99 on YouTube Premium or whatever. So you can watch it if you want. It's very funny. I think it's good.
Yeah.
But it didn't lead to anything because it didn't get seen by anyone. Our distribution budget was taken for the film Machete. So that's another place I got to be in film history.
Yeah.
Our distribution budget was literally just like absorbed into Machete's reshoot budget because it's such a bigger movie.
Yeah.
They just needed extra money, so they killed our movie.
Yeah. What was Steven Seagal, but they needed him? Wasn't he in the first Machete? Whatever.
Yeah, I didn't see it. All I know is Danny Trejo. So, so then our second movie that got made was we were approached by a company and asked to write a movie with a few bullet points that they fed us.
Yeah.
And then we wrote that movie, and then they took it, stripped our names off of it, announced at Con that they were producing it, and now it exists. It's a movie called Force of Nature that Abe and I wrote. It stars Mel Gibson, which is possibly the most insulting. Like, if we were involved in the process, we would have vetoed that casting.
Yeah.
So it's like a shitty knockoff Mel Gibson action movie. And if you look up the production company, they've since been sued into oblivion, specifically for their entire business model being stealing scripts, stripping young writers' names off.
Yeah, what we're saying is this is a super cool town.
They're also the people who have been accused of, like, using Bruce Willis to the point of abusing a dementia patient.
Cool.
They're the company who just churned him through as many movies as possible while he was, like, out of it. They suck ass.
Yeah.
The guy who actually personally fucked us is also a character on Vanderpump Rules. If people watch
that,
cool. That's the level of garbage people that we're talking about.
Oh my god.
So anyway,
so
we had one movie buried, one movie ripped off, and then we're like, I guess our final try is we'll make our own movie.
Yeah.
So we reached out to the fans. We crowdfunded about $60,000 of the budget, which, if you know anything about movies, is not actually enough money to make a movie.
Yeah.
So that was still based on a lot of gumption and sort of like understanding that we feel like we could get it done by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
People don't know this behind the scenes, but I'll tell you because I always am just totally transparent. We got our funding up to about $800,000, which would have been, that was the ideal. That's like what the script is sort of geared, the price point we wanted. And then we had a major investor drop out. We had many frequent conversations with them. But when it came time to sign the paper and transfer the money, they just ghosted us. I never heard from them again via email or text. I don't know if they were lying, they lost the money, and they're too embarrassed because that's such a crushing conversation to have. I'll never know.
Yeah.
It's another reason that you're like, well, my career in Hollywood could have worked out, but it didn't.
No.
So that person pulled out. Some dominoes fell. Other people pulled out. We're back down to $100,000. Not enough money to make the movie. We got involved with another production company that's interested in fundraising on our behalf. They dropped out. So it's been like a year-long process of, because Abe and I have written 10 versions of the script.
Yeah.
We're ready to make a Kevin Smith version for $80,000.
Yeah.
But we keep delaying because there's things where people are like, well, I might be able to get you $500K.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then we could make a much better movie. So obviously, I guess we'll wait.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't. Okay, well, are we ready to shoot the fucking cracked sketch Kevin Smith version for $80,000? Well, there's this rich furry who says they'll read the script. Okay, well, let's give them 2 months to read the script. They called today. They said, pass. So it's like, all right. So basically the boat we're in is we still have producer. Again, we haven't failed out of Hollywood. Yeah. That's what's hard. We're in the middle.
Yeah.
So we've won a couple screenwriting competitions with it, and we have producing entities who are interested in setting up series of meetings where we go have little bottles of water and talk to people.
Yeah.
And the way it works in movies is sometimes one or two of those people cut you a check for several $100,000 and you're done.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have that meeting 30 times and then you go, all right, now can we make the movie?
Yeah.
We're going to make the $80,000 version of the movie with the money we have. Everything else is a lie. These people are just jerking us around. So, and 99% of the time, the people are just jerking you around.
Yeah.
And we've had a bunch of like Hollywood middlemen take $1,000 here and $1,000 there to do nothing.
Yep.
So the money slowly.
Yep.
So we're basically just waiting till we pull the trigger. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
But I think if you've been following the project, you're probably disappointed with how long it's taking. I think it will be reassuring to hear that, like, it will come out.
Yeah.
Or I will be dead. Like, we won't. It's going to exist. It just will take forever.
Yeah.
Because we hate the idea of making a cheap version, of course, because we want to make very ambitious shot concepts and shit.
Yep.
But I'm like, some fans will probably be happy because basically the only way we can afford to make a Kevin Smith movie, this movie is a coming-of-age story, highly dramatized version of when my dad came out as a gay furry when I was 17.
Yeah.
That's true. Then all the events are dramatized.
Yeah.
Killer
hook for a comedy, but like
we thought so.
Yeah,
We're like, as a good 4-quadrant, like Book Smart or super bad type movie. So laughs and heart. That's what it's about. By the end, you learn to be one notch more tolerant. But basically, all I wanted to say is, if we do the cheap version, the only way we'll be able to afford that is like, I play Hank, and Cody Johnston from Crack plays Ed, and all the faces that people know me and associate me with are in the movie. Yeah. Because they're all dear friends and they would do it at cut rate prices. And it's just interesting because obviously, like, I want Bobby Moynihan to play my dad. And he, was in talks, but now we can't afford him. Yeah. But I know there's Crack fans who would be like, I think it's dope that Mike would be in it, so. Yeah. However it works out, hopefully people enjoy the end result, but it's a roller coaster.
Have you considered putting Deadpool and or Wolverine in your movie? Because then it'll do gangbusters.
There was a reference to a Wolverine action figure that I think we literally just scoped out because you have to pay licensing rights to do that. Yeah. So for example, there's a pivotal scene based around Super Smash Brothers. But we've created our own unique characters, Space Fighter Blue Jay and Business 8.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, for the kids listening at home, that is a not uncommon.
Film is dead. Don't try. Yeah. That's the big takeaway.
Well, it is tough. Truthfully, though, having a lot of these conversations recently, post and obviously hugely supportive of the strikes and everything, but business schools are going to do what they do and use that as an excuse to punish everybody else, and post COVID and stuff like that. Yeah, it's whatever. But
and you're like, well, I can't afford bread, so I'm just trying to deal with that.
Can't we just?
Right? This line went down.
How about
the shareholders?
I know you want to make a movie for $200 million in hopes that it make $1 billion, but hear me out on this one. How about you make a movie for $1 million, and then when you make $5 million, that's still profit.
Or how about this,
Yeah.
which is what the age-old cry of the screenwriter, like me and my friends, who have written a dozen screenplays to the point that we feel like we have some objective ability to tell good screenplay from bad screenplay. The staggering thing is when you watch a $200 million movie where the script is objectively bad and broken, and you're like, it's so cheap and easy for the script to be good, and it makes more difference than anything. But I'm like, there's so many good writers. I don't understand the excuse for a script being bad almost ever. Like, it's not hard. If you work at it, you can write good scripts every time that you write a script. It's not like a magic trick.
So I wanted to end on this question from the Discord. Jake Hefner asked, going back to the climb referencing the climbing of the great tree that comprises the entire universe. Is that a reference to Yggdrasil from Norse mythology? Do other mythologies play a part in the book at all? Also, the book sounds quite interesting.
Thank you, working backwards. Many mythologies play a part in the book, but most notably Mayan and Mesoamerican folklore, which is actually where I'm referencing that world tree, but they have a almost analogous tree whose roots are down in the underworld and whose branches are in heaven. Boy, I should know it. Shabolda. They're specifically modeled after something that just blew my mind and I can never get out of my head, which is on a trip to Belize, I saw a cave that the Mayan tribe there thought led to the underworld. And, because there's no mystery anymore, we've since plumbed it or whatever, but it was deep enough that you could never get to the end, or at least not. It would take, days and days, so they never did. So I don't know, there's something captivating to me about the idea of, not symbolically, they thought that cave over there, like we live here, 6 blocks that way, you go in that cave, and that's hell. And there were amazing things inside, like they had carved stalactites, not into shapes, but such that when the sunlight hit the entrance and made a shadow, it would make a giant shape of a god.
That's
like
so
on the
cool.
Wall. Anyway, so I have always been really fascinated with Mayan folklore. So it's primarily that. I actually got to say, I don't think there's any Norse inspiration in here, which is fucking fine. You got Valhalla, you got Valheim, you got Vikings. It's all we do right now. So go play God of War 2. You'll be fine. But there's a lot of Central American folklore. And then the other thing is that I've made my whole career in pop culture. And this sounds really highfalutin to say, but I'll say it. So like the book Finnegan's Wake. It's famous for being incredibly difficult to understand because it's so dense with interconnected things that you have to be fluent in. You have to be fluent in like 6 languages to get some of the jokes. Well, I'm aiming for that level of not difficulty to access, because on one level I think you can read it and just access it. But that level of that richness is there if you want to read it over and over and connect the dots. But with pop culture fluency, which I think is the currency that's truer to our time and to our artistic moment. So, if you, like me, are an encyclopedic font of Star Trek knowledge, you will notice at least one meaningful Star Trek reference per page. I mean, at least one.
Wow. Well, one of the jokes I laughed the hardest at was in your opening. You talked about how like there's subtle Star Trek references, and then in Sino's work group there's Captain Jean-Luc Picard, and I'm like, that's good. So subtle.
There's a background NPC he meets named Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise. And it's like, why does he always say the whole thing like that? But anyway, but not just that. I think like you intentionally, it doesn't feel pop culture. It's supposed to feel mythic and fantasy-y. But if you catch anything, it's intentional. So like there's Arrested Development shit in there, Space Ghost Coast to Coast shit in there.
Love it.
It's so like I would say it's much more interested in our mythology, meaning like obscure Simpsons punchlines that you read and you go, in the way that I feel is just as special as knowing Swahili. only people who grew up at this time and saw that episode of The Simpsons will know exactly what this joke means.
Yeah. I think that's a good instinct too about having it be in there, but not being, I guess, dependent on it, because that could make it. You can
follow the full plot with that. It's all Easter egg level. Right?
Yeah. Well, and my I grew up with TNG, with my parents watching it, but my wife had never watched it, so we've been going through.
I never watched it in my 20s, so I can even say that it's not a childhood thing. I just think it's the best show we've ever made.
It's really going back, because you never know when it's. I haven't watched it since I was a kid. Going back and revisiting it, you never know, and it's like, wow. Granted, like we're hitting the big ones, like, so not a lot of season 1 and 2. Yeah, you know what I mean. But for the ones we're watching, it's like, this is great. Like, this still works. This still holds up. And in some ways, I really miss making shows like this, in the sense that there's some episodes where, like, the ship got hit by a thing, and now Worf needs to deliver a baby, and these two, and Picard's in an elevator stuck with some kids, and now we just see what they do now.
Yeah, but what strikes me all the time is TNG. So, and I would say this is the main thing that the book is inspired by TNG on.
Yeah.
Every single chapter ends with this convention in the book where it goes, lesson, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be, sometimes it's a punchline, sometimes it's something I really truly believe is good life advice, but it's always supposed to be a distillation or reflection on what just happened in the chapter. And that is straight up TNG, because to me, what we've lost, for example, WandaVision, not to pick on it particularly, but the standard way you dispense even the resonant heartline that's supposed to dispense the deep meaning of the story, is that you have a character say what I would describe as like a catchphrase or a poetic bumper sticker. Love is grief persevering. That's the most common mechanical way we deploy. This was what the movie moral was. TNG does a thing that we don't do anymore. And I understand why, because we're like, that's not exciting to look at.
Yeah.
I know. But to see a show where Captain Picard explains, or like, okay, the example where Unification Part 2, where Data talks to Serica Vulcan.
Yeah.
And Data says my whole deal is that I want to learn what human emotions are because I want to be more human.
Yeah.
And Serica Vulcan points out that Vulcans train their whole life to suppress emotion, and just because he was raised by humans, he's made it his de facto goal, when in fact, as you expand your consciousness, you'll often find that things are not inherently good or bad or useful or not useful, but different in different contexts.
Yeah.
So mastering your emotions is just as valuable a skill as getting in touch with your emotions, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Point is, they say true stuff that like your parents would tell you to help you navigate life.
Yeah.
And we don't even try to do that in shows now.
Yeah.
Like, shows do not teach even young people like what's important about. You have to go real young. Like, from what I hear, Bluey has real life lessons that are actually useful. But I'm like, TNG used to say shit like, Data, courage is an emotion too.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's so deep and true and good.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think to you going back to your book with the climb, and I think that's something that sci-fi in particular, but I think maybe also fantasy is in a unique position to do, because you are allowed to use these fantastic settings as mechanisms. When you go using Data or any robot as an example, now you have an other to kind of try and articulate what is it that is unique about being human? What does it, or what is emotions? Like, how do you articulate what our emotion is, and how do you know whether you have one or you don't have one? You have a unique opportunity specifically in this medium to accomplish that. And I'm sure that was really freeing might not be the right word, but beneficial to the client.
I think a lot of writers who are attracted to sci-fi, at least a component of it is that, like me, they live in their heads a lot.
Yeah.
They like people, or like, I'll just switch to speaking for myself. I like people. I like connecting with people. I love my friends and stuff, but I connect even more easily and readily with ideas and concepts.
Yeah.
Like the idea of someone sacrificing themselves to save the life of someone else will make me cry, but actually witnessing my real loved one die, I will need more time to process or whatever before it hits me, or blah, blah, blah. So I think a lot of people attracted to sci-fi will tell you that, like, yeah, sci-fi tends to be idea-driven, and then fantasy is character and plot-driven. Like, you tend to fall into a series of fantasy novels because you're like, Legolas is so cool, or the Dwemer are so cool. But with sci-fi, you're like, you really said that about the nature of nuclear armament.
Yeah.
Really something to ponder.
Well, for an example, I think one of my favorite recent sci-fi shows is The Expanse. And a big part of that is colonizing different planets. And there's a moment, slight spoilers for The Expanse, everybody. But a big part of the plot is people on Mars have been working generations to try and get that to be like really habitable without domes.
Lower class labor.
Yeah. And then suddenly they have access to a bunch of other planets. And the question is, so do we just bail on what we've been doing for generations because now we don't have to? What does that mean about our culture and everything we've defined ourselves by? And it's like, yeah, that's something sci-fi can do that other genres are not as easily capable of doing.
And as the best sci-fi does, it bears. I mean, we can see so many analogies to things that are you're right, 1984 for a reason. It's not just from nothing. So like AI might. Personally, I don't think it's there yet. But like, right in our lifetimes, that's the thing is like, oh, okay, so if the computer can make art, what does that say about, or like we fulfilled our whole hierarchy of needs so we could make art. We thought of that as the highest thing that a human can aspire to. What now? Or is that important that we do that?
Yeah. Well, listen, I've kept you long enough. Thank you for doing this show. Before we go, one last reminder, where can the kids at home find your book and your other work? Yeah,
so I recommend doing it in this sequence, which would be heading to wherever you get podcasts or any kind of podcast app or Spotify or the Apple app thing, and type in Mike's sci-fi novel, The Climb, or just The Climb novel. I think, like pretty much a lot of combos will get you there. But if you're looking for like the whole feed, that's a recent release in the feed called Small Beans, which is the name of my outfit. That's where you can find everything. We do shows on mental health and wellness, but also mostly pop culture, video games, movies, all kinds of shit. Pop culture analysis primarily. Yeah. And if you like all that stuff, then you can get even more of it over at patreon.com/smallbeans. But the big takeaway here, if you care about the book, is if you go to patreon.com/smallbeans, you don't have to pay anything. Some people are like, if you go to Patreon, isn't that immediately a paywall? No. You just go to that page. Yeah. You're still free to click on the tab at the top that says shop, and that will take you to patreon.com/smallbeans/shop, where you can buy the book as a visual PDF for an e-reader, a physical copy that's more expensive to be mailed to you, or the audiobook that just dropped that I think is probably the recommended. Yeah. It's like 9 hours and 15 minutes.
There you go. So there will be links in the description, everybody. I highly recommend you check it out.
And I narrate it. I hate my voice, so I'm just saying that. So if people are like, I hate his voice, I'd rather read
it. So you're like, it's okay. I'm just saying that so it's okay. But
it's interesting, man, because like I don't know, I just can't stop myself from experimenting. In the written PDF and e-reader version, there are also sections that are written in code and visual symbology. So obviously, if you do the audiobook, those parts have been rewritten. So it's a whole world of my imagination for you to explore however you see fit.
You can almost say it's a whole multiverse of different ways to explore. The Climb. Links in the description. Go check it out. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can find this show. Oh, I almost did my OSA out. If you want to find my podcast network, that's at Only Stupid Answers, but you're going to want to yank the vowels out of stupid on Twitter /X. And we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.